This is what happens when we don't know or collaborate on the what we're going to open the show with. Good morning, people.
I thought that was
I
that's like my radio uh, sound effect intro.
I ended up completely lost with no idea.
All right, well, we're here this morning, and it's Friday. And anything going on?
Uh, honestly, I haven't seen anything but the road to the royal wedding. That is dominating the news here. And Clay says, "Okay, we can start now. He's here." As if.
Oops.
Uh,
The radio here has like ignored it, luckily. But the stuff I listen to, the radio I should listen to, is like I think an hour ago or something. It switches over to local. So before that, it's like some middle of the night national thing, and it was nothing but bad stuff. Every little detail that nobody cares about.
well, evidently somebody does because it's all over the fucking mainstream media. I mean, and I'm sitting here watching it, and I'm quasi entertained by it. I mean, and I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, what I'm saying is it's not unwatchable. Just I don't get this whole fascination with the British royal family.
I don't know. I mean, it's got to be a guy girl thing or something because it's completely foreign to me. I can only assume that it's like whatever you get from having like a friend that's getting married or, the big to do of getting married or whatever, except that instead of it being like your friend and your parent, your girlfriend don't know about it, or it's your cousin and your girlfriends aren't there. Like this is one that everybody can participate in and talk about.
There's a possibility there. I have a little different outlook on that because, hell, at my old lady's suggestion, we got married at a courthouse. She didn't want a big wedding. She said, "Why the hell does that matter?
Yeah,
The
seriously.
ceremony. It's what happens afterwards that's important."
Yeah, and unless that dude's got nothing but money flying around, then that's money you could use for something useful.
No
Unless you're
shit.
both going to appreciate just the ceremony of it, and then, like I said, well, maybe it's I shouldn't say guy girl, it's racist or it's genderist, but just people that really like the all that pomp and ceremony, they probably again can all watch the same wedding and then comment on the same thing instead of a little tiny one. I don't know.
Yeah, I was in a big wedding. I was best man for my uncle, and that was horrible. And I stood up for a couple of my brothers. That wasn't as bad, but they weren't as elaborate as the uncle's wedding. And that was before I got married. And her and I talked about it, and I said, I really don't want that crap because it's just a fucking horrible day. And she didn't want it either. So we ran up to the courthouse in piss pouring rain with the same uncle and her sister and got married and been doing that shit for I can't remember how many fucking years. 37. We'll be 37 this year. But it's not the wedding, it's what comes afterward that's important.
So they're not talking about the Royals so much. They're talking about some kid went into a school and the resource officer stopped him. I don't
Yep,
even know
that's
if that was
right
in.
here.
Okay, so they're talking about that, and then they must have been interviewing some sort of school official or whatever, or maybe a politician who has some interest in school issues or something. But they were asking that guy who was saying like, "Oh, you don't need this or you don't need that." And this guy on this radio show is really into arming teachers. Like that's his, champion. He champions that concept. So what he did ask the guy was, well, do you think that there's anything about the gun-free zones? Because these people, all these things happen in gun-free zones. The guy goes, oh, no, there's no correlation at all. And so then the radio show host asked the guy, well, would you put a big sign up in front of your house that says this is a gun-free house? And the guy's like, oh, no. I have a sign up that says we have an alarm system. And he's like, all right, so why do you have that sign up? And he's like, oh, that's to deter people from coming into my house. So I don't know if that got through to the guy. I mean, it didn't phase him on the interview, but you would think that when enough people give him that kind of a logical corner to be in, he's got to figure out at some point that he paints himself into a corner. And you would hope at some time he's going to, not just search for another answer to that, but figure out like that his reasoning is not logical.
I don't think logic plays into it.
Oh, no, I'm sure it doesn't. But
The fucking line.
I don't think logic is in it either, but I'm hoping that some of these, at some point, people get slapped into it, right? Your reality comes crashing down, and you, even if it's not in your radar, it becomes evident. And that's where maybe like his wife or his kid or somebody will go like, why don't you realize gun-free zones are the attractive nuisance here?
That's probably about the only thing that saves us from having far more gun control than we have is that the average dude on the street that listens to this stuff scratches their head thinking, that doesn't really add up.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure of it. Well, as sure as we can be. Clay is the wedding industry was estimated to be worth $53.4 billion just in the United States. So that seems like a lot more.
I forget the number, but they were talking this was going to bring in over $1 billion for this one wedding to the British economy. And I don't doubt that because there's people from all over the fucking world lining the streets to just get a glimpse of these people riding by after they get married.
So let me put it to you this way. Would you rather, if you got to be the boss of everybody and decide what they're going to spend their time on watching the royals get married or sports?
Damn, that's a good one.
Because it seems to me like, yeah, there's a lot of people, and I have no idea what the scale is, but if a bunch of people come to some country to watch something like that wedding, I just go, okay, well, every 4 years, everybody goes to some country to watch sports, and then that doesn't even count like the soccer sports and stuff that happen every year.
That's a damn good question because I'm one that's really strongly in favor of the sanctity of marriage. So even though I didn't have the ceremony, I still believe in it. But I'd still say sports is a better waste than, especially if you're talking Olympics.
So you're saying that's a bigger waste of time and effort than the marriages or the fancy?
No. Other way around. The marriages or fancy weddings are a bigger waste of time than like going to the Olympics. I would love to go to the Olympics. I would do that if I could.
So because of the sports part or because it's getting the world together to compete peacefully?
A little of both. Some sports are absolutely fascinating. Curling, for one. I mean, it's boring as hell if you think about it. But it's absolutely fascinating because you're playing shuffleboard on ice with a shuffleboard puck that weighs 30 pounds.
That's the one with the big giant rock and the brooms.
Yep. And I'd heard Richard Dean Anderson mentioned it a few times in his various TV programs. And at the time, I had no idea what it was. So I'm thinking he's talking about curling, lifting weights. I'm like, that sure doesn't seem to be all that entertaining to me.
Yeah, they're talking about 30-pound weights and curling, and you're like, yeah, big deal. Like, let me get in on this. Sounds like I could win the Olympics.
But, yeah, I think, I would never want to be in the position to dictate what people do with their time. I mean, even if I was king of everything, I wouldn't dictate how people spent their time, If you want to eat, you have to work. But it's your choice. So the wedding industry is more than the firearms industry. I think there's a correlation there. Many shotgun weddings.
Almost double though.
Well, maybe that's because shotgun weddings have went down. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be too stigmatic anymore to knock a chick up and split.
Well, no, if you're trying to destroy a country, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to have it crumble from within, especially when it's a country that can kick your ass, then wouldn't you want to go in there and destroy any kind of organizational thing that allows people to, succeed? But yeah, if you can make little kids have a tougher time at it, then you got a whole generation crippled.
It is absolutely terrifying to sit and think about all of this particular stuff, the long range stuff. And when you're thinking in terms of the destruction of this country, it almost looks like it's went right down the fucking checklist. And
Problem is, I think I was in like third grade or something. I was a little kid. It was old enough, I guess, that she waited till we were old enough to remember it, I guess, our lives. But this teacher took, like, I don't remember, something and put it in a box, M&Ms or rocks or something, put it in a box, and then kind of like a shoebox, and kind of shook it up, set it down, and had us look at it. And I think we might even have drawn it or something. And the idea was that our brains are going to create order when we see things. It's just the way our heads work. We just try to see a pattern and stuff. So it's possible that we are just very good at seeing patterns in 2020 hindsight, as they say. But yeah, it sure does seem like if you were writing it, 60 years ago, and you were going to write how to do it, it certainly does seem like a script. But like I say, I don't want to assume that just because we see it clear as day from this angle, it doesn't mean someone had the resources and the wherewithal to actually plan it out and have it follow through, right? Even if it didn't follow the plan, I guess it's possible that it could have happened. But here's the thing, though. Honestly, if we're talking the whole concept of the Soviets screwing with us as free people and trying to take over the planet, does it matter if it's even possible or conceivable that the Russians started doing this in the 60s? If we are on a road that might as well be the exact same road to destruction and to communism, then it doesn't matter if they created it. If we're on that road, let's get the fuck off that road, right?
Yeah, no shit.
So it's like, oh, okay, they didn't do it. Okay, you're right, but we're still on the damn road. Everybody, you're not disagreeing that we're on this road to falling apart. Why don't we do some efforts to get the elements back that made us what we were, or that make us what we are, that is such a unique country.
I truly don't know where we end up, to be honest with you, looking in the future, because it looks pretty fucking bleak. As far as the citizenry waking up to what appears to be going on, when we've got a royal wedding that's got captivated so much of the world's attention. And I sit here and I watch it, not because I really like it, but it's on. I found it kind of entertaining. It wasn't unentertaining enough that I would seek something else.
Well, you know what that sound means? It's time for news of the day.
Really? Is there any?
I don't know. I just like playing that button. Yeah, let's jump over to. There's all kinds of stuff actually. If I got my shit together, I just woke up. So let me. Let's go to the main page. Gun channels. Probably not that much because we did this yesterday. I think we're screen shared now. Oh, I'm not really watching. Let's jump over to the main page. And there's the announcement for this show. The announcement for Ellis's last night show last night. There's the Daily Gun Show. Clover Tech had a show talking about. How were they talking about last night? the pot, the states that have the pot, and oh, I guess they're getting kicked off of YouTube now also. So it was, is YouTube after everybody, or are they just after things that, whatever? So a lot of speculation. It was an interesting show, and I always think it's interesting to talk about the pot stuff because that fascinates me. A bunch of potheads you would think are like the most disorganized group of unambitious drifters, right? Yet we've got, I don't, whenever you look at a state of marijuana laws or whatever, it amazes me that it's just like CCW. It's probably going that way. Not in, I'm almost positive it's not because of the potheads, but because the laws are dumb and most people just don't care or want the laws changed or don't care, and the potheads are getting to take along for the ride. But at the same time, if they had any influence in that, then I think it's something to look at, something to pay attention to. So I jumped into the last of that one, but I had a point now. I can't remember because I started playing with a sticker over here. So that was an interesting show though, and I don't think YouTube is going after any specific areas based on what they are, other than like violence and the massive illegal stuff. I think that this might again just be YouTube getting rid of big channels, but I don't know all the details. So anyway, that might be an interesting show worth listening to if you like Clover's panels. Yankee had a show with me and Matt. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say one thing about the pothead thing. I've known a number of them, and everyone that was really hardcore was a hard-working son of a bitch too.
Yeah, most of the people I know are potheads. I mean, I don't know how people think that they don't know potheads. I mean, if you have a relationship with people where you can ask them, hey, what do you think of the pot? And they'll tell you like, oh, blah, blah, blah. You can tell from their answers, if they're familiar, if they've got a real position on it or not. And I think most people, that's like drinking or coffee or something. That's one of those things that so many people have tried it, and not at least in school or whatever, or when they're in college or what, that there's nobody. It's not like heroin, for example, where like how many people have tried heroin? Very few, probably, I think. But when you start talking about marijuana, it's more like the numbers of, coffee or 7-Up or something, and you might not prefer it. It might not be what you're interested in or seeking out, but you might be intimately familiar with it. Or you have a kid or a dad or a mom or a daughter, right? That it's just too pervasive. So I think I don't know. I don't talk to too many people that think that they don't know anybody, but I think people would be surprised if they thought about it.
I would imagine that over half of the individuals that are adults in this country have tried pot.
Oh, I think it's way more than half. Yeah. I mean, think about it. I don't know how often you have discussions with people, but out here in Arizona, it's tried to get what do you call it, recreational for, I don't know, last few roundabouts, and it'll come up in conversations. And yeah, I mean, again, it's like speeding or something. Yeah, you don't speed every day, but pretty much everybody's going over the speed limit. And I think a lot of people have the opportunity in schools, right? Because again, it's on the black market, which is one of my problems with it. Anything on the black market is open to criminals and getting it to kids that are too young and not stuff. So, I mean, we all saw it in schools probably. It's available. So I think if you count somebody who's like tried it in a locker room when they were 13 or something, or behind the bleachers when they're a kid, I think most people have at least been walked past the cloud of it or something.
Yeah, there's enough people that have tried it and realized that it's not heroin, and it shouldn't be classified as the same thing as heroin.
And that's why I figure it's getting such traction or whatever in all the states, is because there's just too many people that are familiar with it enough to know that it's not the danger that even you watch like a Reefer Madness show from the olden days, the black and white show.
Fucking hysterical.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, there's no drugs made that react the way that those things are talking about. Just nothing except for maybe like a hallucinogen that's super powerful or something. Like Yeah, they're
Ink
crazy.
dust. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they were. Well, they weren't thinking. They were making it up as they went, I would say.
Oh yeah, it was certainly agenda based. If I've seen some things that talk about the reasoning for all the why we had all the different prohibitions, and there was all kinds of theories on why they got rid of that marijuana. So they were talking about that, and an interesting show. Yankee had a show with me and Matt, and I don't remember if we actually talked about anything on an agenda. Yankee's just getting his shit back together after moving to his big fancy mountaintop estate, and let's see, go fuck yourself. Is his username over here saying, why am I blocked from chatting on YouTube? I can tell you that Yankee ain't gonna ever read your gun channels thing, and even if he did, he wouldn't address it. I don't either. If you got blocked by one of us, it's just like anybody. It's because you're weird or obnoxious or something, and why would anybody change their mind on that? Like, make a first impression that's horrible, deal with the consequences. So I don't want to speak for Yankee. I've known him for however many 8 years or something now. He's pretty much got the zero tolerance that I do. When you've got hundreds of thousands potentially of people walking by and having interactions with you, you develop no tolerance for weird, extreme shit. So we don't do this stuff so that we can have aggravation in our lives. So I don't know what your particular deal is. There's no way for me to know who you are, but why you're getting blocked. There's that asking publicly in a comment on a forum just makes you look ridiculous because there's nobody's going to respond to you there.
I don't know. Hey, carry on. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, then I guess I'll play this for a second. I don't know if
An amazing thing took
Fox
place
News will
Wednesday
get
that I
us.
bet you didn't hear much about it. School resource officer in Illinois.
So that's that school thing. I was looking, I think they might be, or no, I guess they didn't. I was thinking I had a theory yesterday that they pulled out some of the videos that I played in the middle of shows, but I guess they didn't. Tony already addressed this one, but thanks for Tina for posting these. It's always cool to have stuff to talk about on the news feed. And if the other shows see that the news feeds are a good resource, then we can all contribute to the various shows by posting stuff that's interesting. I don't know what this one is. 43 minutes.
1, 2, 1, 2. Want to be able to reduce those bad things that happen and try to mitigate them. But the question is, would gun control actually stop awful incidents like that? Would they do anything to prevent those terrible tragedies that we see on television? I don't think there's a lot of evidence for that. We can analyze all of the evidence that there is. And very frequently, the shock of events like that causes people to say, we have to do something, we have to do something. But we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and we're doing something that will actually solve a problem rather than just take away people's rights. Right now in Chicago, there is an art installation. It just went in as part of this gun control movement, which is, it's like those city bikes, those bicycle racks that you see in certain cities, except it's mock AR-15s. They're plugged into each of them. And the message of this art exhibit is clear. The message is that in the United States of America, it is easier to get your hands on a gun than on a bicycle. And the trouble with that art installation is it isn't true. As somebody who has purchased both guns and bicycles in my life, I can tell you definitively, it is much harder to get your hands on a gun. But actually, I'll go further than that. And this is the heart of today's discussion. Because in the United States of America, actually, it should be much easier to get your hands on a gun than on a bicycle. This sounds crazy. This sounds radical. But the reason for this is clear. There is no constitutionally protected civil right to ride a bicycle. There is, however, a constitutionally protected civil right to keep and bear firearms. Now, we know that this is an individual right. We hear it in the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights. The framers and the founders thought that this was so important that it would be number two. It would be second most important only to free speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. Right after that is the right to guns. Why did they think that? These framers were not stupid men. We're talking about Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton. These are pretty smart fellas. And they all thought that this right was so important. So why did they include it? Well, to begin, they didn't just invent the right out of whole cloth. The Second Amendment doesn't read, the people shall have a right to keep and bear arms. In fact, it says, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is an important difference, because what the framers of the Constitution are saying is that there is already a right to have guns. Americans have a right to have guns, and we are not going to infringe on it as a government. The United States inherits this right from the English Bill of Rights from 1689. But this comes out of a tradition and a political tradition in the West and in America. Now, the Second Amendment reads, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. This is also important phrasing, because it doesn't mean the right of the government or the right of the states. Some people, especially gun control supporters, they want to pretend that the Second Amendment only protects the right of individual states to have certain firearms and to regulate them, or of the United States as a whole, the nation state, to keep and bear arms. But the framers are very precise in their wording. And I'm very sensitive to this. I was very precise in the wording of my book. You have to use words very, very carefully. And the framers used the words very, very carefully. They said the right of the people, because in the Constitution, different rights are reserved for the states, for the federal government, and for the people. We have a system of checks and balances, which we'll get into a little bit more later. But if the Second Amendment easily could have read, the right of the states to have guns shall not be infringed, or the right of the federal government. But this one is reserved to the people. And this makes perfect sense, because in order for the Second Amendment to protect anything at all, it has to protect individuals' rights to own guns. A lot of times you see in the news or activists or politicians, they harp on that first part of the Second Amendment, the well-regulated militia clause. And they say, well, all it does is protect the right of a militia to have guns, or your right to have a militia. And this argument fails. It fails for a very simple grammatical reason. Listen, you're at one of the best high schools in the country. You seem like smart people. You can tell the difference in grammar structures between a clause that is operative and a clause that provides justification. Those are the two clauses. The well-regulated militia first part justifies the Second Amendment. It explains why the Second Amendment exists. But the only part of that amendment that actually defines a right is that second part, the operative clause. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is what operates. The justification gives a little explanation for that. So it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. That's one explanation. Another explanation could be they're really loud and they scare away bad guys. Guns being really loud and scaring away bad guys, the right of the people shall not be infringed. But frankly, that first part could read anything at all. It could say Pop-Tarts being delicious and nutritious, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That second part remains true regardless of what the justification clause says. And the wording seems a little weird to us because we don't write like that anymore. We don't write our laws like that anymore. But at the time of the ratification of the Constitution, this was a common practice. It was in state constitutions all over the place. A right would be explained a little bit for future generations like us, but that wouldn't entirely limit the scope of that right. The right remains as it is defined. But even if we grant this part, even if we talk about that militia part, the gun control argument still fails for a few reasons. One of them is the definition of a militia. So unlike standing armies, if you enlist in the United States military, they will issue you a gun. Militias are a little different than that, in that frequently in militias, you bring your own gun. It's BYOG sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes militias can be BYOG. So in order for the militia to be able to constitute itself, people need to have a gun. There are a few other definitions of militia. How do we know what the framers thought a militia meant at the time of the amendment? Well, we know from the laws of that time. There was the Militia Act of 1792. The Militia Act of 1792 defined the militia not as some radical group of people, not as a state-run entity. The militia was defined as all white men between the ages of 18 and 45. And I will point out, life expectancy at this time was 36. So that includes a lot of people. That includes approximately 9 years after most people died. That's a lot of people. Now, of course, in the United States, in the intervening couple centuries, we have expanded American political rights to include many more groups of people. They've transcended racial lines and sex lines. And so today, the militia wouldn't only mean white men between certain ages. For one, we live a lot longer too. But we get an idea of what the framers meant by militia. So now we know what the Second Amendment protects. It protects the individual right of the people to keep and bear arms. Now the question is, why does it matter? And this is the question you hear all the time. If you're ever debating gun rights with somebody, you see it on the news. You know those news shows where it's just two talking heads screaming at one another. Occasionally you can hear someone make this out. They say, why do you need an AR-15 to hunt deer? Why do you need an AR-15 to hunt? And the answer is, well, the answer is actually you probably shouldn't hunt deer with an AR-15 because it isn't powerful enough. You should use a more powerful gun. But we'll get back to the AR-15 later. On the point of the Second Amendment does not exist to hunt deer. The framers didn't just really hate deer or something. They were sitting around, they said, okay, Madison, we've got to protect free speech and we got to kill all those deer. I hate them. I hate those deer. That is the Second Amendment of the Constitution. That's not what it's for. That's not what it's for at all. The Second Amendment, very simply, is to protect liberty against tyranny. That's what it's for. The Second Amendment is not for hunting. It's not for target practice. It's not to shoot tin cans in your backyard. It's not even to protect yourself against muggings and burglary. Guns can be used for all of those purposes. They can be very useful for all of those purposes. But primarily, the reason the framers enshrined the Second Amendment is as a hedge against tyranny. The framers of the Constitution believed that an armed citizenry would be able to protect liberty in the country. And without an armed citizenry, it would be very difficult to protect liberty. Because, well, we've seen this happen a lot. When various governments have taken away the right of people to have guns, they can become more oppressive. They can become more tyrannical. If a citizenry has guns, they can protect not only themselves and their property and their family, they can help protect their cities, they can help protect their states, they can help protect their whole country against threats both foreign and domestic. We saw this shortly after the founding of America. We beat the British, we sent them crying back home, and then they came back just a couple decades later and invaded again. But an armed citizenry can protect against threats, foreign and domestic. And we know that the framers thought this because they said this repeatedly.
I don't know if he's back, but I'll probably get copyright strike at that point.
Yeah, that's
an excellent speech. It's sad when you look at the kids and the audience there looking bored as can be. I guess that you could expect that with dumb kids, but man, what a great speech. This guy's very well spoken.
yeah.
You heard of this guy before? Michael Knowles?
Just if he's been on the Gun Channel's page. I'm horrible at remembering names, so
This guy was, I mean, it sounds like he's some sort of speaker, writer type of thing, but that was, Tina posted that. Let's see. They did posted a 43-minute video.
the only one that I really sticks in my mind is Shapiro.
Oh, as far as being a speaker?
Right, yeah. Being eloquent on our rights.
So after that one was this bracket. I guess Clover and Ghost had a show together, and they picked a bunch of guns that aren't a Glock. And then Tardot had a show or posted a video about some holsters he saw at the NRA show. Dead Horse did his 5.56 history. Have you been listening to that at all?
No.
This is awesome. I can't tell you how awesome this is. So we're gonna listen to a second of this. Him and David from Florida get together, and I think they're reading a couple.
And we are live.
They're reading a couple of 3 different books on the AR-15, and they just kind of go through, read a couple of paragraphs or so.
We can make this gun a more specific purpose gun for specific duties just by doing subtle changes to it, basically. And that's where the experimentation starts, is with that range report, is when they were testing basically the ballistics and effectiveness of shorter barrels using a 5.56 cartridge. February, the TCC requests new sources of powder for the M193 cartridge from DuPont and Hercules. The submitted powders are the EX 8208-4 and HPC-11. So we're still having powder issues. We're over 2 years past the date of where the United States Air Force, has bought in over 100,000. Well, by this time they've bought 200,000 guns, and they're in the hands of Marine units. They're in the hands of Army units, but very select units. They're not just like, keep in mind from last show, they were making orders of 80, and and then an order of 200 and stuff. So these are just in very, very few and far between units still.
It is super excellent show. It's worth listening to. This is the second part. They did a first one. They've got from the first show was mostly the development, the origins of the 223. In this show, I had to stop and go over to Yankee show, but it's 3 hours long. They talked about it for a while, but the part I listened to, they went from the 223 to the 556, and it's just infinitely interesting because this is being developed right before the war and then during the beginning of the war, like he's saying, and the guns themselves are going through transitions, production issues, how fast they can make them, how fast they can get chrome lining on stuff. You hear about all the platitudes or whatever they're called, like about the AR-15, like they seized up, or they're made out of plastic, or they weren't chrome lined, or this and that. And when you get into the actual history of it, you start to see where, like he's saying, 200 go out here, and those 200 didn't have this, and they got into the powders. And when it was that, there's that subtle difference between the 223 and a 556, and that has to do with that prototype stage there, or whatever you want to call that, like that introduction stage, where not only were they dealing with the chrome lined issue, but also the powders and the cartridge, coming from a Wildcat cartridge, it was, little things like it would chamber seat, but then pop that bolt back just enough that it would be a light hit. And these little things, they're figuring out and getting feedback from the units that are using these things. Unfortunately, like with consequences, lethal consequences, sometimes people are discovering, in this environment with humidity and stuff, it's quite different than most of the United States. It's, they're finding things in the guns that they're not finding in testing. And anyway, FN took the cartridge and looked at it for a bit and turned it into the 556, made the wall thicker so they could get more pressure in there, and the cartridge itself, the case, could withstand whatever it needed to cycle better, to function better. And they talked a bit before I left about how the units that had the original ones were improvising and adapting and cutting barrels off and stuff, and that's the development of some of the other versions of the AR or the M16, I guess. And then just super interesting. So if you're listening, if you got time where you're trying to fill time and you're looking for interesting stuff to listen to, I forget how long the other one is. It's many hours. This one was 3, and I'm sure I think he said there's at least 1 or 2 more to go. And really neat. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the AR-15 necessarily. If I was going to sit down and pick something to research, wouldn't necessarily be an AR-15, but the amount of knowledge he's got on this show is awesome. Really, really cool.
It sounds interesting, even from where I sit. I don't have that much interest in the AR at all.
Right, exactly. But it's just interesting when you get that much knowledge, and then to just see the consequences and the little happenstances that create these little tweaks. And there was a bullpup that was sort of being developed at the same time by a couple of generals, I guess, that really were adamant about getting to a bullpup thing so they could keep a larger caliber, I think. And interesting stuff.
I had read some about the powder issues with them and chrome lining, but I was always curious why the fuck they changed the powder when it went into service.
Well, I guess it had to do with, for a while, they had a bunch of powders from World War II. And they're like, yeah, make something, use these powders up. Like, we got millions of pounds of powder, use this. So, they did. And that wasn't the perfect powder for it. And then I guess they went to the rod type of powder so that it would burn. So they were just doing experiments like that. Like, hey, if we go from this style to that style, I don't know, I got my eye. Changing the burn rate or the dwell or whatever, all that little tiny stuff can affect, reliability or consistency of the thing, operation. And Yeah, I can't even imagine when you start thinking about it happening during actual fighting. I would think that at some points that would be sped up, testing and everything would be sped up, but on the other hand, getting feedback would be a challenge. So, at the same time, you have the potential for it to speed up. It might actually slow down, at other places because of that difficulty getting feedback back. Unfortunately, can you imagine? There's fucking horrible consequences if somebody goes out and there's a bad issue and they all die, then you don't get that feedback, and that's horrible. I mean, think about it. You could potentially have a whole bunch of horrible shit happening before you actually got feedback on why people are not coming back from give you results of that test. Imagine being not even enlisted, but drafted. I think at the time they're talking, it's mostly enlisted, though.
It strikes me as the AR went into service fairly quick from what we see of trials today.
Yeah, and maybe some of that was learned, lessons learned. Like, you don't do your trials when people are fighting. You do your trials when you got all the time and money and resources.
I don't remember well enough what I read to even really much speak about it, but I had ran across that. I read it and found it interesting, so I think I would find these shows interesting too. I gotta get better internet.
Knives had a chat, and it looks like another one from this Michael Knowles. Punker, this one's from Tack Daddy, talking to Pincus. What do you think of Pincus? You got an opinion?
Do not know enough about Pincus to say.
So this is, what is the number one problem in the industry today? So let's hear what the number one problem is.
Capital.
The problem that I see in the industry right now is this fear of confrontation, fear of accountability, fear of discussion. People say we should all stick together. Well, guess what? Not every gun owner is responsible. Not every gun owner may represent every other gun owner. It's important for even gun owners who are trying to be responsible and do the right thing to discuss, to talk, to figure out what the differences are. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's right or wrong. The whole I agree to disagree thing, I don't buy it. I want to understand you, right? I still may not agree with you. I may disagree with you, but by understanding you, at least we can have some mutual respect, and then we can all work together for the rights of gun owners, for the interests of gun owners, and for the interest of being responsibly armed Americans.
Now, I would give him thumbs up on that one, but that's not necessarily the industry. That's the gun community.
Community, yeah. I'm distracted by this cool little shotgun pin thing he's got going on there. You see that?
I wasn't even looking at it.
Thing's cool. I'm just full screen it. I don't know if you can see it now. It dropped down, but
I could see it. I just wasn't looking.
Looks like some kind of 3D little shotgun thing. I like that. Looks like Jelsma had a thing here. So 12 gauge, 1 ounce windjammer wide. We are shooting 6,000. Best trap and target shooting powders. Do you got an opinion on this?
Nope.
I use Blue Dot. Blue Dot.
I haven't loaded shotgun shells in many, many years. Most likely, if I did it, I would use Tight Group.
Tight Group?
I have a bunch.
It doesn't even have Tight Group on here. So.
It may not be
common.
Classic quote-unquote shotgun powder because it's actually pistol powder. But it's not much different than universal.
Harry did a range review here. Started out in his car. Oh, I thought it was for the range. I thought it was the range was called Star. So a review for his gun. So this bothers the hell out of me. You see how this range has cords, cables running its thing back and forth?
Yeah. Like
PVC for its thing. Those drive me nuts when they got their air on, especially with a big thing like this. These things move. Look, it's moving right now. See how it's moving back and forth just from him shooting? I mean, I guess for just plain old shooting, it's fine. But if you're trying to get data, a hole inside of a hole, it's tough when there's just wires out there.
He didn't seem to have a big problem.
This
Maybe
one,
he's
this
shooting
is-
at
that's the
3
wire.
yards.
I'm counting this one because of the wires. Yeah, it's not too bad on that one. Vote for the top 5 best pistol actions for new shooters. Be doing a video, so let him know about the polls. Did he do a poll?
Striker.
So I don't understand this. 5 best pistol actions for new shooters. You're saying a striker fire for a new shooter?
Yep. Absolutely idiot proof.
Potentially. I'm thinking it's hard to argue with that. I would think signal action would be the only other thing I could think of because he said pistol. But yeah, I think you could get somebody into a revolver, then take them to a Glock, and they'd be done. This is a thing I was thinking about playing a little bit of these on the Early Watcher on Daily Gun Show. Craig is one of the guys over on Firearm Policy Coalition, which is a group out of California, started by the Second Amendment Foundation as a way to group a bunch of the nonprofits, it looks like, and then at some point they all split up and they became just a standalone thing. I'm going to try to interview the guys and find out what the whole story is there. But now they've been doing excellent work over in California, and I've always been impressed by their presence on the Instagram and their effectiveness over on the Instagram. And now it looks like they're venturing into doing a video, like daily update, and they call it Coffee with Cruz and or Coffee with Craig, and they do about 17 minutes in the mornings, so it's pretty cool. And he's obviously comfortable in everything, and he's knowledgeable, and it's great to have somebody who's putting that kind of effort into it. You hear about these other organizations, and a few of them are out there with the kind of presence FPC has. So thanks to Tina for posting that one, and we'll see if we can't incorporate. If nothing else, we'll link to those shows so that people know about it, because it's a quick way to get a recap of what's going on in California. A couple more posts. She's doing a lot of posting over there, which is cool. Gives people something to look at, and hopefully encourage more people to start using this front page.
Yeah, I try to comment on some of her posts to keep some interaction going.
And that's we use gun channels for the the live chats and whatnot, but there's plenty of people that are at work, don't have the ability to use the headphones, can't have something going as far as an audio. So it gives them something to check out and read, and like you say, interact with the comments and stuff.
Yeah, I have no problem chatting in the little chat windows that pop up text-wise. I'm just as comfortable doing that as I am talking.
Well, in a lot of ways, I think that can be effective communication too, because not everybody can get together at the same time. We no longer have to be in the same place, which is awesome, but we do have to be together at the same time to be live, where with the old forum type of system or with the comments type of thing, you can make a comment 4 hours later, somebody can come by, reply. 8 hours later, you can reply. It doesn't happen quickly, but at least you have actual communication. And it's a little bit different when you're going slow like that with words, because you have time to be more deliberate. When you're talking, it's kind of on the cuff and just a little bit different type of communication.
Well, I'll tell you what. When I first set in on the early watch with Jimmy, I had no fucking intention of being here today. I was completely content with just text chat, because I enjoy that to a certain extent more than I do this.
There's a little bit more to do here. Obviously, you can't just be, oh, I got to go do something or get distracted or take care of something for 5 minutes. I mean, it's five minutes of dead air if you do that.
Right. Yeah. And there is the putting your mouth syndrome too, and everybody's prone to that. And a lot of times when we're freewheeling it, you say shit you didn't want to say.
Yeah, I guess that happens. You definitely get that skill by doing it, though. So if that's a, I
Yeah,
don't know
it
if
isn't the
two can.
problem now that it was. But I've been doing this for a couple of years.
Last we got Snowy had just posted that he's back from doing his thing. I think we talked about it yesterday, doing his fishing and stuff. So that was the last day or last 24 hours over on Gun Channels. A lot of night stuff. A couple of chats probably happened that nobody posted over there. I'm going to be doing some, now that everything's kind of consistent now with the layout and everything, and seems to be working good, getting some feedback that the phone app is working for people as well as it can, with the only issue being you have to kind of turn the phone sideways to see the text chats, I think. So anyway, I'm going to do some like welcome to Gun Channels, check us out, and then some navigation stuff and give some tips and tricks on how to use some of the tools that people might not be using yet. And figure we could talk about what's going on today. This is Early Watch every morning, and then Budget Guns and Gear will have a show at 7 p.m. Eastern. Belsma does his Fish, Fur, and Firearms at 9 p.m. tonight. Firearms Friday with Clover Tack at 10 p.m. Eastern. Edge comes on an hour after that at 11. We do the daily show at midnight on weeknights. And I think we're missing something in here. I know Night Strike does a Friday strike or something like that. And then, man, I thought there was another show on Friday. So if anybody is aware of a show, or if you're doing a show, I'll get with any of the moderators over on Gun Channels, and we can add it to the big show schedule over here. That's where I get the one to post on the main page there. And anytime you want to check out what's happening on Gun Channels, there's this schedule at the top of every page.
I should jump in on Budget Guns and Gears chat, because that's me. I'm not one for spending shitloads of money to have the best of, well, now what the fuck am I saying? Because I have one of these guns that I've bought lately, but normally I would buy cheap or less expensive guns for myself, like Rugers instead of Colts for cowboy action, or Ubertis.
Okay, so Ruger's over Colts for single action shooting. I mean, I'm not going to say a Colt isn't a fragile gun or anything, but a Ruger is substantially stronger, and it's overbuilt. So I can almost see that not being a cost thing as much as, like, I just want a tool that is never going to break. I want a big sledgehammer if I'm going to be hammering all day.
Well, some people they want the real thing, and Colt does make it.
Yeah, and I guess there's probably something to the elegance of the Colt, if that's the right word. Like, it probably is so popular because it was just enough metal to do its job and be strong and safe, but also so little metal that it was still wieldable, or more wieldable.
Well, the Rugers are certainly a handful, but I don't notice that much difference between them and the Ubertis. And the Ubertis are not, super heavy built like the Ruger is.
Well, they're literally the Colt design, right? They're the Colt blueprints.
Remington.
Oh, they're Remington.
Ubertis are outlaws.
Oh, okay. Well, Remington is more of I'd call a little sleeker, like a Colt compared to a Ruger.
Yeah, it is a little sleeker, but it doesn't really feel that way in the hand. For one, it's got 2-inch longer barrel, which, because there's a little bit more hanging off the end, it makes the gun feel heavier in the hand. But
well, in single action revolvers, I think they're a little bit unique. Like, they knew what they were doing. They had all the time in the world. They could mock things up. They had infinite research, and this was done for hundreds of years. They've been developing them. When they're in your hand, and like you're saying, they've got that weight. They're like balanced differently, so they might feel heavier or whatever, but it's like a comfortable heavy. Is that the right way to say it?
Right. It's
feel good.
The longer barrels don't feel front heavy, even though they are. I mean, if you put your finger in the trigger guard and just let go of the rest of it, it will drop forward. And that's every one of them I got. But it doesn't feel that way when it's in your hand. Yeah, Sam Cole, or whoever I'm assuming it's him. He had the grip of the thing figured out. I don't think he really quite was there on balance until like 1851s come out. Because, well, the Patterson might have been. I don't know. I've never had my hands on one.
I got to play with a Patterson. If you ever get to Waco, Texas, there's a what are they called? Texas Ranger Hall of Fame and Museum, and it's super good museum. And one of the, I guess you'd call it like an interactive type of display for like the kids. They'll have walkers sitting there like tethered, so you can pick up a walker, 4.5-pound revolver. Definitely an experience because most people see them next to other guns, but there's nothing like picking up a walker. And then they have a Patterson, which consists of the handle, basically the handle like mechanism. You've got the cylinder, and then you've got a barrel, and then you've got a little square-looking pin thingy that holds it all together. And it is really neat. They're all tethered, and you can take the thing apart and put it back together. And it's an elegant gun, a really neat. Thinking about how it's the first, production revolver, really. Wow, it is neat, and it's 4-part.
I have not ever considered a Patterson replica or anything because I can't do the no trigger guard. A Walker, on the other hand, yeah, I want one, but I haven't wanted one enough to spend the money to get one because I'm not going to do anything with it. Hang it on the wall.
Walker, I would be happy with a Walker replica. I'm not that into buddy. I don't have any family history with a Walker, so a replica would be fine with me. But I'd be knowing somebody that's got a Walker. I don't need to own it.
That's with me. The replica is fine.
Charles was saying 1861 Navy, best balanced pistol ever. And if the
1851. Is the one I was talking about, but I don't know. I think most of them guns, when they got past the fucking Walker Dragoon thing, started getting really good in the hand. I mean, I get the Walker. I get what they were after. They wanted a freaking rifle that they could carry on a horse.
Well, literally, the design, part of the design was so they could clobber people with it. It was literally built so they could clobber people with it. He wanted it just extra masked for clobbering people with it.
Yeah, and he wanted a handgun that could be used like a rifle from horseback. I mean, so weight wasn't the big issue because they weren't really walking around carrying the damn things. They slung them over the saddle. But it's probably my one I don't know. It's probably his bucket list gun, even though it's not expensive to get a replica. I have a hard time buying something just as an ornament. And that's all I would have it for. I wouldn't really want to shoot it because I hate cleaning up black powder.
So if you buy modern loads for those, they're still using black powder all the time. They don't make smokeless powder versions of the modern stuff? Or is there a way to dumb down powder smokeless to even work on those old guns?
I don't think you can use modern powder of any sort. Maybe the Pyrodex or 777 substitutes.
Because it just seems like, for the most part, people want that smoke. That's part of the old gun. They want it.
It's required in black powder shoots. They have a specific parameter of how much smoke the gun has to produce. And I don't remember it as supposed to be the equivalent of 1 cc of 3F black powder or some shit like that.
Is that just so that it looks cool, or is that some way to maintain like a consistency amongst the participants?
I do not know. I don't have the answer for that one.
Because I think the smoke coming out of the mounted shooters, somebody told me one time that was literally just because they wanted it to look cool. Like they want to be able to It's an event. You know,
That's,
that look cool.
that's entirely possible. The mounted, I'm pretty sure they're the same rule book. I think SAS controls all that.
I think there's some opportunity there. It's coming out of nowhere, but since we're talking about it, and just picturing the girls running around with horses, and they got both hands on revolvers, and they're shooting the balloons and stuff. Wouldn't you think that's like awesome opportunity for all the? It would get you new kind of shooters because it would get you a bunch of horse people and people that just have the interest in doing something active like that. And then just a cool activity, like a neat way to look at shooting that maybe people like a refreshing way to look at shooting that has little violence associated with it, and potentially, you know, the kind of you never know when something like that's going to catch on for a few years and become like a big thing. And I could see that being the kind of thing that people participate in.
They're pretty desperate about getting more members into the cowboy action shooting. The horse mounted, I don't know. It's so expensive to have and maintain a horse, and to get him to where they would be, you know, I have no idea how many people would get into it for that. Now, people who already own horses, maybe. I mean, they're wanting to be cowboys anyway. A lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of that. So
I don't know enough about horses, but you can get horses whose job is to drag people around on trails. And from what I understand, those horses, after a while, figure out their job, and they could walk the people around on trails blindfolded, and you know, on a bad day, still do it nice and comfortably. Do you think that a horse that's trained to do, what would that be called?
mounted cowboy action.
Do you think a horse like that needs to have its rider, or could that be a rental horse? I mean, maybe not the most athletic one, but you know, just a.
I really don't know, because horses can be fickle. And you know, it's not every horse that'll let somebody shoot from their back in the first place. You know, they have to be broke to that. And man,
I know
are
that
you actually abusing the animal by making him subject to the hearing damage he's going to receive?
Oh, I don't think so. Vanessa's saying riding horses on a pig hunt in Texas would be nice. Would you rather ride horses or a helicopter hunt pig?
Horses, because they can tiptoe in.
I think horses would be more fun. Helicopter, unless it's something's different than I've ever experienced, helicopter rides are like minutes. Like you don't fly around a helicopter all afternoon. Nobody's got that kind of money. So I guess if money's no object and you can drive around a helicopter to your heart's content, helicopter could be pretty fun. But I think a horse, more bang for your buck, and it would be super fun. Walk around a horse all afternoon.
Yeah, the horse would be financially easier than the helicopter if you wanted to do it a lot. Plus, like I said, horses can get you places where helicopter can only fly you over. Real common thing around the southern areas was coon hunting on mules, because you know there's a lot of fucking walking in coon hunting, and it's up and down hills and shit. So you know, guys used to break mules to do it, and damn, I can see the advantage of that, having coon hunted on foot a lot. That would be the only way I could do it now.
Oh, I didn't know you
No
walked
way.
around for that. I figured you either let dogs out and tree them and then go walk over there, or you just sit there and wait for them to come around and root around like a squirrel.
Oh, I follow dogs, yeah. But there's a lot of guys, and I don't know specifically region-wise. I know it happened in the southern part of this area, but you know, they raised coon hunt mules. So instead of the hunters walking around, they rode mules.
Huh.
If you subscribe to coon hunting magazines, there's articles on that. That's where I found out about it. Because
What do you do with them? Just make a hat out of them, or you eat them?
Coons?
Yeah.
Most people just sell the pelts.
And I guess you can get the money for the skull too. You get $5 for that skull. You don't shoot them in the head.
Back in the day when I was doing it, a average coon would bring you about $25 at a furrier, and a large one, a large one you could get $60-$70.
Because I see them like they have a big like crafts. Well, they have a big gem show, and there's a bunch of craft stuff there, and I've seen stuff for doesn't cost that much. So maybe it's not quality for making a fur coat out of it or something.
The thing is that was back, 25 years ago or so. I don't know what it is now because I haven't done it for a long time. But when that happened and the coon pelts got that high, then fucking coon dogs started costing $1,000.
Crazy.
Yeah,
there's no return on that. There's no return on that investment. You think you can? That's crazy.
Well, a fucking good coon dog would get you 4 to 6 coons a night.
So $100 a night. I guess you'd have to do that for a few years, really. Well, for at least a year. Well, I guess maybe you get a return.
Yeah, if you was a hard hunter, which I was back then, I was, you could make your money back on $1,000 dog in a season.
Okay.
Not including the cost of keeping the dog alive, dog food bills, shit like that. But I mean,
you can have that with any dogs.
Right, yeah, that's just part of the thing. Partially. I mean, ever so often you'll have to take a dog to a vet and get him sewed back up where coons kick the fuck out of him.
Raccoon? I know pigs can do that, but I didn't know a raccoon will fight.
Fucking coon will too.
What's a coon dog though? It's just a hound, or is it a little eagle-looking thing?
Nope, it's
It's like a medium, big-sized dog.
The ones I liked were closer to the bloodhound in size. But,
okay.
The popular thing was getting smaller coon dogs. So they shrunk them down some, which I never did like. I like the big dog because I like the way they sound.
When they're barking?
Yeah, when they're trailing. Because usually when you have a bigger breed of coon dog, they're really ball mouthed.
So what? Oh, go ahead.
That means that they have the long howl instead of yipping behind them when they're running.
What are they like when you're not hunting? I had a friend that had a bird dog, and it was a little hyper.
Coon dogs, it depends. If they're young, they're pretty wound up too. Old coon dog.
Well, old dogs are old dogs, but when they're young, they're not like one of the herding dogs. We had a Sheltie when I was a kid, and they're spazzes. They constantly want to herd.
No, but they are kind of territorial. So if critters walk by, they'll raise hell at them and shit like that.
You just have with you, or are they like out back in a kennel type of dog?
Generally, they're chained outside. Too big, too destructive. If they want something, they'll just get it. The worst dogs for being hyper were beagles and bloodhounds. That whole lazy bloodhound thing you've seen on TV throughout TV's history is bullshit. I've had a bunch of bloodhounds, and not a one of them motherfuckers lay on the porch all day.
Huh. Yeah, my friend has them. He's on his second one, and they're, I don't know. They don't run around. They just sit there most of the time. He brings them to work with him. They just sit underneath his desk.
Really?
Yeah. His old dog, Roscoe, was the kind of dog where it was his dog. Nobody could hang out with him. Like he only liked him. So that, it was almost like having a cat or something. So the new dog though, little Roscoe, he's much more personable or whatever, but he'll still just, well, I don't know. I don't know what he's like, not 24 hours, but whenever I'm around him, he'll say hey or whatever, and then he'll just sit there.
9 dead in Santa Fe, Texas school shooting.
Oh, Delsman just mentioned something, but he didn't hear anything about anything confirmed.
It's on NBC right now.
Well, we put the offer up there for links if anybody's on the Gun Channel side and wants to jump in. But I think we've been going for about an hour, so you know what that means. Time to go look at what I was working on yesterday. So I've been playing with this Minuteman University project. The goal there is to stand on the shoulders of people who've already done stuff, right? To not repeat stuff. I've been doing this online conversation for 8 years, and there's a ebb and flow. There's an interest and a disinterest, an apathy and a urgency, that comes and goes like any, cycles like anything. And there's groups of people that are interested and get disinterested and come and go. And it's a little bit frustrating to see people go, but it's always encouraging when new people come in. And it's not, I don't run any of my stuff like a real business where I've put out exit interviews or, why haven't you been at gun channels, and try to elicit information about why people have left. And gun channels or like the YouTube channel, big deal. But for something like Second Amendment, it's frustrating. So I can only assume that people feel like they don't find the resources they're looking for, or they're frustrated because it's so confusing, or whatever. And if those are the issues, those are things that can be addressed. So that's what the Minuteman University website and that project, this effort, is all about. It's creating evergreen type of content, stuff that doesn't need to be updated after it exists. Unlike things we have over on Every Second Matters or this effort, getting together and talking about things like this news of the day that's happening right now. That kind of stuff is always going to be a flow like a river, but that's the frustration when everyone gets used to getting their information in this type of timely manner. It's difficult to go back and find things to research. So you need some archived information out there. And again, that's what this project is all about. It's got two sides: the skills, so what we can do and how we can hone our skills, how we can get better skills, and how we can work together to use our skills more effectively, and then resources. And that's what I've been working on now. So if we go down to the resource side, there's a bunch of different things I'm going to be adding to the site. I've been working on the gun rights lobby. So the people that have come before us doing these efforts, making us aware of the Second Amendment, interpreting the Second Amendment, being active in court cases and lobbying efforts, getting things accomplished like constitutional carry and the various acts and bills that have gone through. Again, so that we can map this all out and be aware of who these people are, so we can listen to them. A lot of them are around and still doing newsletters and things. These are people that have been there and done that, are literally the movers and shakers who've made things happen, who've been involved in the situations. So their newsletters and stuff would be valuable resources. And if we've got these active conversations going on various platforms, and we're savvy with how to move information around, if we can get in contact with the people who have valuable information, we can all be more effective. So it's all towards that. And one of the issues is, who they are. So it's not all structured well right now. It's not going to be easy to navigate until I have a little bit more time to get in here. But you've noticed I've been doing the cartoons and stuff. That was an effort to get just a uniform graphic that I can use. People like to see things. It helps you to put a visual bookmark on things. It helps me to remember things when I've got a little image to go along with it. The cartoon thing seems to work well. It's pretty efficient to create. I don't have to pay anybody to do it. Thanks to the people on Patreon, I have some time to work on it. So that was what I've been efforting on. I did some research on, or I delved into it, trying to find out more about the October Cincinnati Revolt in 1977, where the leadership at the NRA changed hands and went from hunting outdoor organization to Second Amendment rights type organization. That was interesting to me, and because we just lost an opportunity with the NRA show this year, in my mind, to make some changes like they did in 1977, I want to do something to give us some resources so that we can have a more effective NRA show next year. So I started with that, and as I started to delve into it, it just immediately started to have cross connections. There's interconnections between these groups. The Gun Owners of America, for example, was reaction to the ineffectiveness or the perceived ineffectiveness of the NRA. So as I researched the NRA, the other groups that sprouted as a result of their actions or inactions are just the consequences of doing that research. Anyway, so I dug into it, and I'll be developing this, but I just wanted to take a second to invite people over. I'll drop a link. Anybody wants to check it out, anybody that wants to be involved in the project, I'm all about collaboration. I don't have time to just sit around doing these things constantly. I sneak hours in. I can play with it while we're on the live shows like this. But the rest of the time, I'm trying to pay bills. I'm doing everything I can possibly do to sell stuff and to do little jobs for people and things to pay to do things. So I could use all the help I can get. If anybody's got some interest in helping with doing some of this, let me know. We can get together and figure out ways to work on it together. But the goal would be to first map out who these people are so that we can give them credit and talk about them. We'll be featuring some of these people on the upcoming shows, like on Daily Gun Show and stuff. And then the next step is to look at some of the organizations. We've done that in the past, and it's time to do that again. And we'll do some timelines and some little history pieces to give people an idea of where we got to where we are today. We kind of showed some of that stuff yesterday with the talk from the guy from the 80s, that lawyer who kind of shifted the paradigm to interpret the Second Amendment as an individual right for self-defense. And it's stuff like that is being discovered along the way. So we'll use shows like this, these daily shows, to keep people up to date. But again, we want to encourage people to check out the sites that are there. So if you're doing a show and you're having a conversation, consider it a resource. If you scroll down to some of these people, there's some information. I'll have links to their Wikipedias. So again, these can hopefully be a resource when you're having a conversation or a live show, or you're doing research for one of your projects that you can use for, like you would a Wikipedia or something like that. In addition, they just exist on the internet. So as they sit there for a little bit and cook, links will be established and stuff. And then going forward, people that are doing Second Amendment research will hopefully have a lot of information just, collected here, easy to grab, and not a lot of ads. Thanks to the people over on Patreon. It's not all cluttered with bullshit garbage, with little, exciting little ads over here telling you about boob sizes or something. So that's what I've been working on, and I can quit plugging that. We can jump over and see if we've got anybody asking for a link. Nope.
I haven't seen it. I find it kind of creepy as I'm sitting here watching this NBC special report that the reporter, and I think his name's Lester Holt, is looking extremely happy while reporting on this. It's kind of creepy. At any rate, I'm not going to spout off any details yet because it's still too fluid and I don't want to put out any incorrect information.
So let's talk about just the news. Do you go to like a site and see what they're offering? Do you go to like a Google and say top news? Do you have feeds or something, like things that get sent to you when they feel it's important?
Well, like this is just on TV. I just watched the video. But if I'm looking for gun news, I go to 3 different websites. Gun News, guns.com, I think it is one of them, and AmmoLand's got one, and the hell's the other one? I can't remember. There's a third one. look. One second here. Yeah, guns.com is one.
Primavera, dale a tu jardín un empujoncito.
The gun feed
There you
is
go.
the third one.
Spanish Home Depot ad.
And I also get a lot of the stuff I bring out from the NRA, various magazines. Mostly that's not news stuff, but where I get some of my informational stuff that I go after comes directly from the NRA. You know, most days I say that I got nothing, but that's not because I haven't looked. There's just nothing
some of the
piques my. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just was looking at the news on a couple of different news sites or whatever, and yeah, the numbers are off by a few, but it's all 8 or 9. So it's sounding like another tragedy, atrocity, I guess. Tragedy would imply there was no, like it was just going to happen. Atrocity would be more like it was created. Is that right?
Shit, I don't know. I haven't ever really tried to think about it that way.
I mean, so I'm typing it into Google and see what it says. Looks like it's a hot debate on the internet. 451,000 results for this one. So, contemporary blah, 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 heinous blah, 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 as a tragedy rather than an atrocity, thereby blunting the force of the act by scanting the role of human agency. This is not just a logistic failure, but a noxious failure of thought, and therefore a moral failure with the important social and public policy consequences. Wow. Is that fucking efficient words right there? That's awesome. That's exactly what I was thinking, that they're using these words intentionally. These people went to effing college to learn words. So anyway, the word atrocity is defined as a savage enormity, horrible or heinous wickedness. Wickedness, okay? That is a proper description applying to horribleness that's created by a person. By contrast, the word tragedy is defined in the first instance as a play or other literal work of serious or sorrowful character with a fatal or disastrous conclusion. So literally about literature. Its extension as to consequences. Okay, so tragedy is literally a word that's used to describe a play, or whatever, an act.
Right. Tragedy doesn't have to have a protagonist. You know, where atrocity does. There's no doubt in my mind that these people study words.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically recommended to be an English major when I went to college because of my understanding words and how to put them together. Because I did shitloads of extra English in high school because I was really into literature, but you know, you get into the composition side of it too. So, you know, words matter.
So I'm reading some forums now debating this going back to 2012. I wonder what that was talking about. So this guy says, at a time like this, do we need to worry about semantics? And then the answer is yes, we do. It de-intensifies the level of evil that occurred. I reiterate that it's an atrocity all around. There's no room for the word tragedy here. And I think, again, they are intentionally trying to manipulate with their word choices.
Right, because tragedy can fit on both sides of that equation. Whereas atrocity can. You know, the same thing that people consider an atrocity can also be considered a tragedy.
Well, somebody else said in here that it's a tragedy for the people involved, but it's an atrocity for everybody else. When you describe it, it's an atrocity. But again, I think it's the implication there, the subtle wordplay is, I think, designed to elicit the message that a tragedy is unavoidable. This is a consequence of your decision. This is tragedy. This is consequence that is unavoidable. Where atrocity indicates that an individual was, what was that word in that other one? That an individual was, we got to find that word again. You know, that an individual was the instigator. Heinous wickedness, that wickedness was involved. And they don't like to look at evil because evil implies good and evil. And that gets into religion. And that's all, you know, state doesn't have good and evil. State is just, you know, black and white and 1 and 2 and 3. I don't know if it gets that deep, but I think that there's a definite interest in making it seem like, oh, this is unavoidable. This is a consequence of the political situation we've got, and we need to change that. Atrocity indicates that it's the fault of an individual deciding to do evil with this tool because they know if they did it with something else that it wouldn't get the kind of coverage that it's going to get, and they won't focus on the fact of that choice.
I can use Hurricane Katrina as an example, and this is very loose, so bear that in mind. The actual hurricane event was a tragedy. Many people lost their lives and whatnot. And what the people did after that, the cops and the looters and various things, you know, when the cops went around disarming people and all that sort of thing, that was an atrocity. Now, granted, the other side of the coin ain't going to say that going in and forcibly disarming people is an atrocity, but I, being a strong Second Amendment supporter, view it as an atrocity.
Well, we're getting it right around the 90-minute mark, so you know what that means.
No. On the love boat.
I don't know what that means either. I just like pushing that button. I found it. So nobody's on the gun channel side except for Clay. Clay's out there.
He says he likes his 1858. Yeah, I like mine too. Even though the grip is a little bit different than the Colt style. I seem to shoot him better.
What I liked is having about a span of 14 years there where I could go in and hang out at the gun shop and play with pretty much any old gun I wanted anytime.
Oh, hell, I could do that if I just want to drive in my gun shop. I could do that for probably the next 5 years and not touch every gun they got in there. Lots of them.
That'd be interesting. Hey, do you mind if I go through and clean these things for you? Just take them out, clean them up, bullshit with people, and take the next one out, clean it up, put it away, clean the next one up, clean it up.
Just say, hey, can I go here and look? And I've done business with them for so damn long. I can say, can I go behind the counter and look at these? They're like, yeah, sure. They know I'm not going to try to pocket something. I really like my local. The one, Pekin Guns Sporting Goods. They have been freaking fantastic to deal with. Albeit they're a little pricier than some other places, but it's not enough to make me want to drive any distance. And generally speaking, it's not enough to make internet purchases worthwhile either. Although I have thought about it a few times, I haven't done it yet.
Vanessa's saying the ban on trigger mods was signed. I'd like more info on that. Is that a state thing, or is that something that Trump is doing?
I haven't heard it on the federal level, and I would think that the NRA's ILA division would have told me if that was coming. Well, maybe they snuck it through. Who knows? That sucks.
And who was your first
Either way, it
president?
sucks.
And who was the first president of your NRA ILA?
I have no idea.
Neil Knox. Neil Knox,
Should have knew that.
the guy responsible for the that Cincinnati revolt. Let's see. So Connecticut bump stock and enhancement rate of fire modifications ban. That's too bad.
Because I'm fixing to do trigger mods on my rooters. All right, well, no, not necessarily. I'm fixing to do hammer mods, I should say, because I want to get them cut to half cock. That's one thing I do not care for about the rooters. They don't do half cock.
They don't need it though.
No, they don't need it, but I still want them all to do it.
No.
Well, I ain't going to have it done on my Hunter because I don't give a shit about that one. But
So it's Friday, and we're about to wrap up at some point here because it seems like we got more dead air than BSing, and nobody took us up on the links. We offered links out here about a half an hour ago if you want to jump in.
yeah, come on, you lazy bastards. Get in here and add to the show.
They are chatting it up quite a bit. We got 18 people watching. We got 17 thumbs, unprecedented thumb ratio. Appreciate that. But if you let us know what you're doing this weekend. And because none of us remember where everybody is, throw a state out there so everybody sees where everybody's at. We know where some of y'all are, but it's all about the conversation. And I'm sure Knives already has something going, so people can jump over to that when we're all done here. After this, did we already talk about the shows today?
Yes.
This weekend, though, there's shows coming up tomorrow. The weekend shows are pretty good. You got the day starts out with Caliber Corner, Travis from Kansas, right? No,
Nebraska.
Kansas, or from Nebraska, has been doing a show now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's over a year. Doing it for a while now, consistently, and he's got a real unique way of doing it. I like Travis's style. And then there's usually a gap there. I used to do a gear chat. I want to get back in the habit of doing that, but I'm not in a good routine right now as far as like waking up and stuff. So I end up crashing a lot on Saturdays. But anyway, Rick does a show at 3. There's usually something going on though in the midterm. Pawnery's been putting up a video or a thing if he's playing video games. Other people will put up chats if they're bored or if their plans fall through, if rain or something happens and they can't go shooting. So it's always something to do on gun channels on the weekends. Clearing the Chamber comes. Go ahead.
I do try to jump in on Travis and Rick's show on Saturdays if the weather permits, which means it ain't nice enough for me to get to the range.
Exactly. It gives you something different to do, and yeah, you're still talking guns.
Right, and it's a different show. Both of them are different shows in the early watch, so it gives me a break from the ordinary that way too. But I haven't done it for a few weeks. Our weather's changed, and I'm taking them grandkids to the range.
He ain't listening. You can say it gave you a break from Jimmy. We know.
I ain't got no problem with saying that. Hell, I took a week off the damn show because I need a break.
All right, then we got Clearing the Chamber, Tardot at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by This Week Unloaded at 10. Sarge is doing a show. If for some reason doesn't have a channel, there's channels available, so it's not like there's limited number or anything. Start to set a channel up. And then Smeggy and Moon do a extravaganza on Saturday. Really, I don't know where they get the energy or the funds. It's bigger than anything else I've ever seen as far as the production wise. worth checking out every Saturday. It usually runs for a good 4 hours. It's like a marathon every Saturday. Check that out. Sunday starts off with Matt. I think he plays video games with his kid now, so the schedule is probably wrong. Jelsma, though, does a show in the afternoon. You know what? We have to put something else on here. On
The girls' show.
That's right after Jelsma at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. There's actually one on Saturday, too, I thought. Gunpowder Beauty gets in with Clearing the Chamber. But on Sunday, Yoder, Texas posts the Come and Talk It show, and I'm going to put that on the live schedule because it's not on gun channels, but it's a syndicated radio show, and it is pretty decent.
See, I
Consistently.
tried to listen to that a couple of times and just couldn't.
Don't like the guy or couldn't find the little link?
I didn't like the guy.
Yeah, he's a little loud and kind of like morning radio like. Is that the way I say it? He's like real animated and what? Or do you mean like his positions on stuff?
No, it was his persona, I guess. Yeah. Personality, it just grated on me.
It's kind of difficult for me when I'm listening to stuff on the internet. Maybe it's because I'm so used to just being part of the conversations or listening to people that are normal people talking. When I listen to a radio show type of thing on the internet or some of these podcasts even that kind of produce themselves like radio shows, it seems fake. You know, I'm used to listening to fake on the radio. That's not an interactive communication, but on the internet, it seems kind of odd. But it is a radio show just being broadcast on the internet. So it's not really like a live thing that he's ignoring us. He's just literally broadcasting on the radio.
I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I kind of agreed about the seeming fake after being involved with doing live show.
Or artificial. Yeah, I don't know what the word would be. I don't want to put connotation on, but yeah, they don't, just seems like a waste of time. When you know there's something live, you could just be having the conversation. Anyway, Mindy does some kind of hot dog show on Sundays at 10:30. Cork's My Van Chat. Van Chat's one of the best chats on the internet, and one of these days it'll actually be on iTunes. Let me go look and see if it's on iTunes today. I posted it like 10, 15 days ago. So I've been waiting for iTunes to approve it. And nope, not yet. But eventually it'll be on the iTunes, and that is wraps up Sunday, and then we're back here on Monday. Hopefully we'll talk to Jimmy. I texted him a couple of times, haven't heard back, so I'm wondering if he's just super busy or if he's got a new phone number.
That's entirely possible. I don't know. I haven't tried texting him by emailing though. So he is hitting the early watch email every now and then.
So
the early watch JZ one.
Going back to the chat, Gary says, what? Oh, tonight after the Daily Gun Show, he's going to be doing a Foul Territory. So he's going to be doing a late show. Gary's going to be doing a late show. But Stealth Hunter was saying, what about the night strike? The Friday night strike. I think we talked about that, but Gary's saying that Night Strike intentionally doesn't put the Friday night strike on the Gun Channel schedule. So then he's dead to me. I don't want to take back any mention of that show. We're going to go through and what are they called when you put black marker on it? Rescind it or whatever. He's not posted on Gun Channels. He doesn't get a plug.
Yeah, I don't know why.
He's a hater. I don't know either. So I'm gonna go check the Gun Channel side real quick, see if anybody's saying anything over there. And nobody is. So but Ozzy did say he was here before. It looks like everybody's got Z, so maybe I need to go empty a cache or something. Because we've got a
well,
Z.
if everybody's sleeping, that's when we get in there with our subtle mind control innuendo.
Buy things from GaryWebsites.com. Buy things from GaryWebsites.com. Buy things from GaryWebsites.com. It is Friday, so Free Patch Friday. I should probably take advantage of the early show to tell people about that. You don't need any coupons. You don't need any kind of minimum order. There's no kind of anything. Anybody that orders anything on Fridays, you get a free patch. It's a way of saying thanks and hopefully bringing some money in, doing these kind of projects and stuff. You know, we don't do it with commercials. We don't do it with sucking up to anybody. We're not trying to sell you nothing other than our own products over there. So you're not being told what adapter to buy or what kind of gun to like or any of that. And we can keep it real and work on things like the Second Amendment history, and you know, hopefully build things that people can use to actually affect change going forward. And, we do appreciate people that support us and our projects with the store, with the Patreon. And like I say, one of our always say thanks is to buy things from the store. If you were to buy something from the store right now, it would make a little cash register sound on my phone. So I should also tell people that if you want to make a little noise on the show, then buy something, and then you'll also get a free patch. Now we have to wait for a minute in case people are frantically running over there to buy stuff. Hopefully we'll hear like ding, 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 ding. And then
I hope it does.
if I hear like 500 dings, then I'm going to Denver this weekend for the antique gun show. So there's an antique arms show in Denver that goes on once a year, and it's all antique guns. And I don't even have the gas to get up there, but Bob went up there from Tucson Guns and is setting up. And I really wanted to do it. It was part of the tour. I would have gone from NRA up north and everything to check out the Northwest. I would have gone through Salt Lake City, and now I'd be heading up to that Denver show from NRA. So I would have still been hanging out at just Dragon Man and stuff the last couple of days since NRA, and now I'd be just getting to Denver, and then I'd still be going to Salt Lake City. Still efforting towards that, and you know, I'll whatever. So I guess we're not. I'll quit stalling. Doesn't look like we're gonna get any.
Gizzard Garrett, he says he's here.
Yep, I saw that. Appreciate that.
You're doing a show after G-Webs does his show in the middle of fucking night. Don't you people ever fucking sleep?
No, the night crew is, there's usually 2 chats running at night. If Knives runs his show and Knives will turn a show on already. He's already got one running, right? So then when that runs out at 8 hours, he'll start another one, and that'll run straight through all the live stuff in the evenings, right? Then he'll usually, well, not usually, sometimes he'll start a night show right in the middle of the primetime shows. That'll run till like 2 a.m. my time. And so that'll be one show. And usually the video game kids will hang out in there and chat about their video games. Then depending on Smeggy or Potatoes, he'll have some rooms open. Gary, though, and Ellis have also been opening rooms. So there's 3 live chats happening at 2 in the morning. It's freaking awesome.
That's Gary said Ellis normally does late chat, and he asked if somebody else would do it tonight. So
because he's lazy. Let's all admit it. Old Ellis is lazy.
Well, you know, I ain't gonna say anything bad about Hatfield.
No, just kidding. He's he runs chats pretty much every evening. That's pretty cool.
I guess it's time to wrap this motherfucker up.
I was hoping to get the cash registers down, but all right, I'll go do something else.
Good day, everybody.